inclusive communities in the Americas, expanding access and opportunities for all. Today's meeting will focus on strategic action for addressing brain drain, talent retention, and cooperation. I'm advised by the Secretariat that we have the required quorum and may proceed with today's meeting. To begin, I submit for the consideration of this Council the draft order of business contained in document CD/OD-158/25, which was distributed by the Secretariat. If there are no objections, the draft order of business is approved. Colleagues, as indicated in the concept note distributed by the Secretariat, CD/INF 659/25, the emigration of skilled professionals, commonly referred to as brain drain, continues to pose significant challenges across the region, with the Caribbean being the most heavily impacted. The departure of skilled professionals, innovators, and future leaders from our countries represents a significant impediment to sustainable development, economic growth, and social progress. It is a drain on our human capital, hindering our ability to achieve the very integral development goals to which this Council is dedicated. However, this challenge also presents us with an opportunity to re-evaluate our national strategies, strengthen our regional collaboration, and create an environment where our most valuable asset, our talent, can flourish and develop and contribute effectively to the development of our individual countries and the wider hemisphere. Today, we will delve into actionable strategies for retaining our skilled workforce, fostering an environment conducive to innovation and research, and exploring mechanisms for cooperation among member states. Our discussions will aim to identify good practices, share innovative solutions, and forge collective commitments to transform this challenge into opportunities for cooperation, collaboration, and development. We begin our panel presentations with Mr. Matthew Makovec, Senior Economist at the World Bank, who will share insights into the challenges and opportunities presented by the migration of skilled people from our region. Mr. Makovec, thank you for joining us today. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Your Excellencies and authorities. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Matthew Makovec. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank. I've entitled today's presentation, Strengthening Regular Labor Migration Pathways and Global Skilled Partnership, a Possible Solution to Brain Drain in Latin America and the Caribbean. I hope you can hear me. Otherwise, let me know. Just a couple of words of background. The Latin America region is characterized by large migration flows. And of course, the recent trends, these structural trends are going to be impacted by recent changes in US immigration policies, but we also think that this structural trend will continue. There are currently more than 48 million people from the LAC region outside their country of birth, and 70% of this large amount are estimated to reside outside the region. Countries of destination are shifting, also because of recent policy changes. More people are migrating to Europe and also within the region. And again, we can expect these trends to continue because of persisting gaps in living conditions, incomes, earnings between destination and origin countries, and also because of lack of opportunities at home and high informality and high unemployment, especially for youth at home. these trends affect in particular the Caribbean region, right, where we observe over 4.2 million migrants outside with a kind of a specific destination, the US, like with 2.3 million, and Dominican Republic, but also important intra-regional flows like to Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas, and Belize. And these trends in the CARICOM countries have increased substantially in the past 25 years by 45%. So these numbers are really stunning. And even more stunning are the number of the extent of high-skill migration. Basically, the countries in the CARICOM region are in the top 15 for emigration rate of the high-skilled population that in some cases reach over 90% of the high-skilled population, and let's say that the range of total migration varies between 23% in Belize to Guyana, almost 50% of the total of the population, let's say, in adult age leaves, right? And we are noticed that female high-skill migration is becoming an important component. Therefore, given this small size in the CARICOM countries, you know, there are very, very limited opportunities for high-skill graduates. So we are going to discuss today how we can turn this very serious brain drain problem into potential brain gain, and which are the policy options that can change this course. And now to just put this in the context of what are the global trends, while this is happening in Latin America, at the same time, the global trends we observe, at the global level, we observe big demographic shift, where in high-income countries, we observe a staggering decline in the working-age population with respect to the population in old age. And this number will reach, before the end of the century, there will be only 2 people in working age for every elderly above 65. And you know, we observe also these trends in upper middle-income countries. So this aging is going to create immense labor shortages and demand for workers, like in high-income countries and upper middle-income countries, and in particular in the area of the healthcare sector, in the area where new demands will be needed for older societies in high-income countries. There is an estimate, a recent report published at the World Bank, there will be, I'll share the link at the end, upper income countries, high-income countries, and upper middle-income countries might face a shortage of 750 million workers by 2050. And at the same time, given that also low-income countries and lower middle-income countries are aging, these countries might face, you know, an outflow of over 600 million workers. So there is clearly, let's say, a huge demand in the global north, and there is outflows in let's call it in the global south. But what we notice is that while there is abundant population available from lower and lower middle income countries, the skills of the origin country, let's say, do not match yet the skills in demand in destination countries. And as you can see for the graph, there is still not very much catching up with the, let's say, secondary educational attainment or tertiary education attainment with respect to high-income countries. So origin countries need to act fast to invest in their skills and human capital in order also to respond not only to internal demands, but also to demands of the global labor market. And we also observe typically shortages in mid-skill occupations. In particular, we observe in manufacturing, mechanics and technicians, construction, healthcare and elderly care, ICT, renewable energy, and hospitality services and tourism services. We'll see in the presentation that investing actually in the skill at origin can trigger actually tertiary education achievements and improvement in the skill of the origin population, as in the case of the Philippines, where through the program of Filipino nurses to the US, we observed the increase in the stock of nurses at home. So what are the possible policy solutions? I'm mentioning what we call in the jargon global skill partnership, so bilateral agreement in which destination countries invest in the human capital formation of migrants, country of origin through training, creating potential for triple wins. So this means that in these programs, training takes place in the country of origin and is paid mostly by destination countries, right? Not entirely, but mostly. And basically, this global skill partnership, this training can take two possible tracks. A home track where trainees remain at home in the country of origin, and an away track where they emigrate abroad through regular existing labor pathways and are matched into, let's say, with employers abroad. There are some successful examples in East Asia Pacific. Let's say Australia and New Zealand have been pioneering this program with over 8,000 trainees from small islands since 2007, and with a high, placement of trainees in destination countries. In Europe, the PALIM and then the TAM program between Morocco and Tunisia and Belgium successfully placed unemployed graduates in the ICT sectors, and other programs are programs, for instance, between Germany, Mexico, and Kosovo in the healthcare sector. There are more examples in the presentation, and I would like to just say a couple of words about the one regional technical assistant that we are implementing in our World Bank, financed by the Spanish government, where we are trying to enhance regular labor migration pathways between Spain, Colombia, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic, and to pilot possible global skill partnership in these three countries. Very quickly, we identified, let's say, key 5 pillars of actions where we need to invest. If we want to implement this global skill partnership, it's important to have labor demand assessment at destination and at home with rigorous methods to understand what are the demands of employers and design training schemes according to the demand, but also to the demand at home, because these programs have typically a circular migration component. So through the return of trained workers and workers with experience abroad, then there can be knowledge spillovers and transfer of knowledge at home in occupations that are also in high demand at home. It's important to understand what is the institutional migration ecosystems at origin, right, to address bottlenecks and challenges. And it's important to understand what is the supply of training at home to reinforce the training institutions at home, like TVET or any educational providing institutions, and also to understand what are the gaps in terms of qualification between what is the demand abroad and the local offer. So it's about strengthening systems and educational institutions at home. It's important also to address financing, and here there is an important law for multilateral, let's say, in addition to donors and destination countries that can fund this program, additional financing is needed to bring this program to larger scale. And finally, two other elements is the monitoring and evaluation and assessment of these pathways, let's say, before, during, and after migration, and of course the information and communication on what is available and how this program can be implemented is key at all stages of the process. I'll conclude just to show some results where let's say in the case of Spain and Colombia, for instance, where we are already identifying occupations in high demand in both countries, and so we can select basically tailored training programs in these sectors. For instance, web developers in the technology and digitalization area, home care workers in the health and welfare sectors, waiters, cooks in the tourism and hospitality industry, etc. And And of course, just to mention quickly to conclude, that we are having, let's say, an extension of this program also to actually pilot concretely GSP in these three countries, and will be very interesting to hear your comments and to see whether you see an opportunity of piloting this program in your countries and in your regions. And these are the other corridors where the bank is also engaged between Kenya and Canada and between Tunisia and Italy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Makovec, for sharing with us the findings of recent World Bank studies and the analysis on this important issue for our region. We will be happy to engage with you further to discuss cooperation opportunities. Next, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Leo Prevel, Director of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy Unit. Mr. Prevel is joining us remotely. Mr. Prevel, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair uh, and representatives of the members of the OAS, on behalf of the CARICOM Secretariat and the Secretary General, Dr. Carla Barnett, it gives me great pleasure to participate in this fifth session of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development for 2025, where the topic of human mobility in the Caribbean and its impact is being focused on. Chair, quickly, the Caribbean community is made up of 15 full member states and 6 associate members. Of those 15 full members, the Bahamas does not participate in the deepest form of regional integration established through the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which was signed in 2001, which gave birth to the CARICOM Single Market Economy. The member states consist primarily of small island developing states, except for the 3 larger member states by landmass, which are situated on the American continent. Haiti is the most populous member state with a population of approximately 12 million people, and the remaining 13 member states participating in the CSME have a total population of about 6.5 million people. The economies of the member states have evolved from predominantly agriculture-based economies to the point that around 70% of the region is engaged in the services sector, excluding Haiti, with labor shortages currently in the health and education sectors, and this is linked to the exodus of skilled workers. Chair, when we observe the migration patterns in the Caribbean, the following picture emerges. From work done primarily by the International Organization on Migration, the IMO, the region is characterized by mixed migratory flows. The Caribbean serves as a place of origin, destination, and transit for migrant workers with varying types of legal status and modes of arrival. These trends are characterized by high immigration rates, significant extra-regional migration, a few instances of positive net migration rates, substantial loss of specialized human capital, and sizable amounts of remittance returning to the region. Now, a 2020 study conducted by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs concluded that nearly one-fifth of the region's population lived outside their countries and territories of origin. The rate of outward migration places the Caribbean SIDS among the countries with the highest global immigration rate, and that is work done by the IMO in 2020, the World Bank in 2016, and the OECD in 2012. The United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom remain the most common destinations for Caribbean labor migrants. Now, preliminary findings of an ongoing labor market assessment of CARICOM member states, which is being conducted by the ILO as part of the development of a broader regional migration policy, which was mandated by the heads of government of CARICOM, revealed that the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda and Barbados are the main net receivers of migrants from other Caribbean states, whereas Guyana, Haiti, and Jamaica are the main senders of migrants from other Caribbean or CARICOM member states. Further, all 15 CARICOM member states are net senders of migrants to the rest of the world. Haiti, Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname are the leading senders. Critically, the movements of CARICOM nationals, whether intra-regional or between the region and third states, are primarily driven by economic differences with nationals from lower income member states moving to higher income states. The recent discovery of oil in Guyana is also expected to have implications for regional migration to and from the country. The skills regime in place in the CSME has not led to any significant intra-regional movement of people in search of employment. The focus of the CARICOM heads of government at this time is moving towards achieving free movement of all CARICOM nationals. Chair, with respect to the labor characteristics of the CARICOM region, the ongoing ILO study reveals that around 9 million people of working age, that is ages 15 plus, are in the labor force in the region, corresponding to a labor force participation rate of about 64%. While the labor force has increased from about around 6 million in the year 2000, much of the growth has been driven by Haiti, which accounts for more than half of the working age population in the region. Chair, there has been little change in the labor force participation rate in the region, but gender gaps have been narrowing and youth participation is decreasing. These are both positive trends. Now, very importantly, not everyone is in employment is in a job that can be considered decent work, with around three-quarters of the region's employment estimated to be in informal employment. The regional average decreases to about 50% once Haiti is removed from the regional totals. Informal employment means that workers are often not eligible for social protection as well as other benefits such as paid annual and sick leave. Services account for 86% of all employment of women in the Caribbean region, excluding Haiti. For men, that figure is around 70%. There is a higher propensity for men to be engaged in industry sectors such as construction and transport, although women are often engaged in manufacturing as well as agriculture. There are labor shortages in the agricultural sector in the region, but even more so in the services, health, and education sectors, particularly driven by migration of these workers out of the region. Chair, it is important to know that with respect to labor migration governance, there is no official regional dialogue process or coordination mechanism on migration or labor migration that all CARICOM member states participate in. Some CARICOM member states have national coordination mechanisms on migration and other coordinated committees where labor migration is discussed. With respect to the movement of labor within the CARICOM single market and economy, once a CARICOM national is a holder of a skill certificate in any of the 12 approved categories, he is free or she is free to move in search of employment in any member state. Chair, in terms of the impact of climate on migration, the CARICOM region is particularly exposed to climate-related shocks, given that climate-related disasters are set to increase with rising temperatures and shifting weather patterns. So in terms of recommendations, taking on board talent retention. So given the issues identified earlier in terms of the key drivers of immigration from the region, talent retention strategies as a means of addressing the brain drain will involve some of the following: expansion of decent work in the economies of CARICOM member states, significantly reducing the level of informality in employment, increasing investment by the private sector in the creation of output that requires more highly skilled persons, using the provisions of the CSMA in terms of facilitating the exercise of the right of establishment in a more efficient manner by simplifying and harmonizing the laws relating to the establishment of a commercial presence. Also, simplifying the movement of skilled community nationals within the community, making use of existing trade agreements with third states to attract foreign direct investment in high income earning sectors, and targeting investments in medical tourism and offshore universities, thereby creating high-skilled jobs within the region. In terms of cooperation as a strategy for treating with the brain drain, which we believe there should be a deepening of economic ties with Latin and South America through cultural exchanges and immersion. This will assist in bridging the cultural and language divide and attract investment into the community to produce high-skilled jobs, facilitate greater access via air and sea transportation to the Latin and South American countries to encourage direct investment in the region from these countries. Also, increase access to tertiary level education and skills development for young people in the OECD countries of destination, scholarships to improve labor productivity in the region and increase economic growth rates of CARICOM member states. And finally, OECD countries of destination should contribute to the training and development of highly skilled CARICOM nationals, thereby making it possible for those CARICOM nationals to serve the destination member states as well as the region that they are from. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to make a contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prevel, for sharing your valuable regional perspectives and for outlining practical policy recommendations within the Caribbean framework. Finally, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Jason Marsack, Vice President and Senior Director at the Adrian Ash Latin American Center of the Atlantic Council. Mr. Marsack, thank you for taking time to participate in today's dialogue. You have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in today's session on strategic action for addressing the brain drain and this really important regular meeting of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development. I'd like to begin by formally thanking you, Chair, Ambassador Gilchrist, for convening today's really important discussion at the Atlantic Council and through our Caribbean Initiative. We've been honored to work with you personally and also with your embassy. I'd also like to begin by recognizing and thanking Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary for Integral Development, for the invitation to participate in a topic that's critical for our hemisphere, and of course, thank all of your excellencies for being here in attendance. In my allotted time, I will look at some of the drivers of brain drain, how it affects development in the Caribbean, and policy solutions from government, business, and regional partners, and hopefully build on the presentations, the excellent participations that you heard from the other two speakers. As all of you know, brain drain has been topic across the Americas for decades. Human capital is the bedrock for economic growth, and the loss of it can severely hinder countries' and businesses' ability to scale, to innovate, and also to tackle key challenges. Brain drain, of course, is felt across the hemisphere, but as you've heard thus far in today's presentations, and as you all know, it disproportionately affects the small island developing states that make up the Caribbean region. You've heard numbers, and I'm going to share a couple additional numbers to color my presentation. Since 2000, emigration from Caribbean countries has surged by 45%, with countries such as Grenada, Guyana, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, Suriname, Barbados, Antigua, and Barbuda seeing emigration rates upwards of 30%. And for Caribbean countries, the United States remains the top destination with education opportunities, wage opportunities, particularly as you've heard in the healthcare sector, among others, and also citizen safety being among the many pull factors. For Jamaica, Belize, and the Bahamas, more than 70% of their immigration is to the United States, with every other Caribbean country except for Suriname and St. Vincent and the Grenadines seeing these rates at upwards of 40%. So this means that when we think about solutions, when we think about stakeholders to engage, partnership with the United States is needed, and it's absolutely critical. Many Caribbean countries, as you all know, have small populations, which can lead to limited human capital, and this can affect all facets of Caribbean economies and development at the same time. For example, the simple act of Caribbean ministries welcoming investment proposals can be a daunting task. Limited staff means longer wait times for potential investors to receive feedback on bids for investment projects. And this also creates higher risk and can also deter investors from seeing projects through the end of bid rounds. At the same time, a loss of talent can inhibit Caribbean governments and businesses from competing for grants from partners such as the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. The 100+ pages of proposals required to secure needed financial and technical assistance for infrastructure, digital and energy projects disadvantages Caribbean governments and businesses that struggle with human capital and talent retention. At the Atlantic Council, we have worked with Caribbean governments and the World Bank to identify some of the drivers of brain drain, policy and business solutions to address them, and how to convene the right stakeholders to ensure that the appropriate actions take place. Through a series of roundtables previously and discussions with the World Bank and Caribbean governments, we led to 4 main recommendations that either help to address brain drain or can also capitalize on some of the opportunities that come with talent leaving. This has helped to inform how we are supporting capacity building, how we look at that with local businesses and with civil society. So I'm going to go through those 4 recommendations. First, we highlight the importance of building skills partnerships, and you've heard about that in the other presentations as well. Skills partnerships between destination and source countries. This ensures that when people leave the Caribbean for the United States and other parts of the world, their skills, their expertise, and talents are housed and transferred back to the region in ways such as perhaps remote teaching or remote trainings. People will leave, but the question is, how do we ensure that those skills continue to be maximized both in their new place of residence, but also back in the source country? In the U.S., those types of skills partnerships are not just limited and shouldn't just be thought about being limited to the federal level. There are skills partnerships at the state level, at the community level, and of course with different types of institutions from business to education institutions. Second, the talent retention is absolutely key, and you've heard about that through the presentations thus far, but talent retention is not always possible. And in that case, skills gaps across the Caribbean can be addressed through high-skilled workers and other parts of the region, perhaps coming to countries that are in need of skills. This can be a more concentrated effort from governments, from multilateral institutions, receiving countries, and non-public stakeholders to work to try to fill these skills gaps across the region, working with partners beyond the initial country. Third is a focus on circular migration. This entails enticing migrants to return to the Caribbean or to retain skilled workers through sufficient labor standards, competitive pay, and job security to limit the drivers and consequences from brain drain. I think going back to the earlier in the presentation, brain drain cannot be looked at in isolation. It's tied to broader economic development and tied to broader economic opportunities. And so how do we unlock those opportunities and focus on what can be unlocked through circular migration? Governments can work with educational institutions in receiving countries to ensure that as citizens leave the Caribbean, there is flexible mobility and opportunity that can be created to encourage them to return to the region. And finally, we have to look at the importance of diaspora communities. And collaboration with diaspora communities is integral to help with skills development, fostering entrepreneurship, and also improving trade alliances. How can diaspora partnerships help to improve opportunities at home? And how can those strong ties with diaspora be maximized even further is a pending question. Addressing the drivers and challenges with brain drain, as you heard throughout my presentation, will require partnerships. Whether you are a source or receiving country, each government and society is affected. I think working together to share resources and knowledge are opportunities to address the implications of brain drain. And that can start here in places like the Organization of American States. The OAS is the premier coordinating institution in the Americas, so I'd like to invite the OAS to partner with the Atlantic Council on this topic, particularly with our Caribbean initiative, as we have done previously. By leveraging our collective expertise and convening power, we can use upcoming regional platforms to produce policy recommendations and outcomes to look at how to stem the flow of brain drain and also how to maximize some of the opportunities that do come with people leaving their countries. I'd like to thank the OAS and Madam Chair again for the invitation and look forward to questions from member states and the appropriate follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Marzak, for your thoughtful presentation and for highlighting the strategic role of multi-stakeholder engagement to address this issue. I now open the floor for an interactive dialogue between member states and our panelists. Delegations are kindly asked to limit their questions or comments to 3 minutes. The floor is open. I recognize the Bahamas. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Bahamas is appreciative of your decision to convene today's CD meeting, which focuses on a long-standing and critical developmental challenge facing the developing countries within the Americas, brain drain. As outlined by our distinguished experts and colleague member states, over the past 2 generations, the Caribbean region has been the region most impacted by brain drain, particularly emigration of tertiary educated individuals and professionals. Over time, neoliberal discourse has shifted the view of brain drain away from seeing it as largely a destructive legacy of colonialism and underdevelopment that has continued to facilitate developed countries free riding off the investments or assets of developing countries to it being a resource allocation issue, i.e. the normal result of capital moving to where it can be best used and compensated in a globalized world. However, there are real-world developmental impacts from brain drain for small developing countries who continue to remain caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place. Like many OAS member states, an area where the Bahamas continues to face critical challenges is in the healthcare sector. Despite locally producing more than 100 qualified nurses annually, the Bahamas has long faced a nurse shortage, as many seek better paying opportunities in the United States and Canada. The developmental challenge posed for the Bahamas is compounded by the fact that Bahamian nurses are trained by the government free of charge, and the Bahamas has a system called bonding that require nurses to work in the Bahamas for a specified period of time given the public investment made in the education and training of local nurses. What we are finding, however, is that healthcare systems in countries like the US are offering salaries inclusive of signing bonuses that are designed to allow nurses to buy out their bond so they can emigrate to the United States, which has led to a chronic nurse shortage in the country, particularly specialized nurses. In order to address the critical shortfall, the government has to recruit nurses from abroad, including from within the region, while many continuing to train nurses in the University of the Bahamas. This is one of the many examples of the practical developmental challenges that modern-day brain drain poses for small states like the Bahamas. Given the complex nature of the factors contributing to brain drain, including the realities of geography, colonial ties, limitations small countries face with respect to economic scale and global socio-economic relations among countries, solutions to the brain drain will need to be similarly complex, account for the historical relationships of dependency and underdevelopment fostered by colonialism over time with a longer-term horizon to address both push and pull factors and fostered co-development. While the Bahamas and countries like ours are working on mechanisms to diminish push factors and to better leverage diaspora while they are abroad, We also encourage developed countries to consider ways they can reinvest in countries losing talent to, at the least, help countries like the Bahamas offset the lost investments in professional immigrants. Enhancing support for the human development and capacity building programs offered through the OAS can be one way to facilitate such reinvestment into the developing countries of the region. The Bahamas looks forward to the sharing of experiences and solutions to the pernicious issue of brain drain during the CD session and to building on today's discussions to foster concrete partnerships to address the persistent developmental challenge for most of the countries of the Americas. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the Bahamas. But I'd like to remind delegations that this is the interactive dialogue session during which we receive questions for the panelists' response. Chile, I recognize you for posing your question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. When we heard from the economist from the World Bank, I think I read that this brain drain is more common amongst women than men. I'd like to know why that is the case and what are the social factors that make that so. We also have the impression that this Global Skills Partnership tool seems to be a tool for developed countries towards developing countries. And what could we have between Latin America and the Caribbean? In other words, between developing countries in this sense. Thank you.
Much, Chile. I now offer the floor to the panelists to respond to that question, those questions. World Bank, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to address the question by Chile, if that is okay, because I think on Bahamas was more general consideration, and so I'm going to address you. Bueno, entonces paso a español para...
I'm going to speak in Spanish to answer the question. I'd like to respond to Chile's question, and also I'd like to state that I began my career in Chile working in the public service sector and the academic sector. As you know, there are many potential solutions with respect to brain drain. Beca Chile, for example, has been developed in Chile. That's a very valuable example where basically students can do a postgrad abroad, but they are obliged to go back to their country of origin because, well, many work in the public sector and are professors. I think it was a very successful program, not only for tertiary education. There was also programs for teachers, and so I think it's a worthwhile program to look at. It was also a program that could be extended to Guyana or other countries that have natural resources and have flows from that and could finance that. With respect to gender, what we're seeing is higher numbers in the Caribbean, especially in recent years. As other panelists have stated, we see a lot of migration in the health sector, and that's a sector where we see more women, which I think is one reason we have these high numbers of women. What countries in the region can do is try to not only have this global partnership with high-income countries, the United States and the European Union, but amongst countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, I think that this program could be developed with Chile, with Brazil. Those could be countries where people could go because there is an aging population, and Argentina as well, which has a migration policy which is very favorable. These are countries that could be destination countries, and what is key is the recognition of degrees. In CARICOM, I think things are moving in the right way. They are implementing this one market where we have recognition of different degrees, but a lot of that is at the level of agreements, de jure agreements, but in fact, the mobility is not taken advantage of because there are friction or obstacles to migrating. For example, recognition of degrees is a problem. And so I think these fora are important to push for the facilitation of recognition, of degrees so that that goes faster. And that can also help mobility within the region. And also with changes in migratory policy in the U.S. and the European Union, there are more opportunities to develop these migratory flows within the region. And countries can, like Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, we have a lot of outflows, and other countries can take on these people.
I now offer the floor to Mr. Marsac to respond to some of the propositions in the presentation by the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll address the question from the Bahamas and then Chile. I think representative from the Bahamas made an excellent point on the particular impacts on the healthcare sector that the Bahamas faces and other countries face as well. And I think that what that comment also lends me to share is the fact that when we look at partnerships, it's very difficult to have partnerships across all different types of sectors, and it's absolutely fundamental to, as what's been heard about throughout these presentations, is working with host countries, working with receiving countries, but sectoral-based partnerships. And so thinking like specifically within the healthcare sector, what are specific partnerships that allow for perhaps greater circular migration or specific skills partnerships between the destination and source countries? And what I want to put out there before all of you present is the fact that the migrants who are leaving, the brain drain affects a number of different sectors. The solution for each sector is going to be a little bit different. And so looking at a sectoral by sectoral solution will help to address some of the different drivers of the brain drain. Y solamente un comentario para
Just a comment for the Chilean representative. As my colleague from the World Bank stated, migratory flows are changing every day, and they are changing in a very quick way. And now Chile is increasingly a destination country for migrants, and there are new destination countries in the Americas for migrants. The United States has been a destination country for many years for migrants from the Caribbean, but I think that this is changing. And so it's even more important that countries amongst themselves think about how to welcome these migrants and rethink circular migration. so that there are opportunities, so that people contribute to the economy in a lawful way, and then have the possibility to go back to their native country. We also need to recognize the skills of migrants so that they can contribute as quickly as possible to their new homes.
Thank you, Mr. Marsac. I now offer the floor to Mr. Preville. Mr. Preville, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to state that within the Caribbean, and especially in the CARICOM member states, the matter of recognition of skills and recognition of degrees, this is not an issue that is hindering a movement of persons, because we have a CARICOM Examinations Council, we have a University of the West Indies, our training, our TVET policies, they allow for easy movement of people. So that's not the issue that is hindering movement within the Caribbean region. More importantly, it's important to know that the migration of skilled CARICOM nationals to the OECD countries, mainly Canada, United States, and United Kingdom, is not only driven by CARICOM nationals in and of themselves seeking employment. These OECD countries are actively engaged in coming to the region and offering packages of employment. Um, and you can well understand the challenge that the member states of CARICOM would face. Most of those high-skilled persons in the medical sector, for instance, they work for governments. And therefore, it will be difficult for the governments of those member states of CARICOM to match the packages that are being offered to the skilled professionals in the health sector in particular. So, so there is a proactive approach by the OECD to recruiting those persons. Therefore, if we are to treat with the brain drain in a practical manner, it would require, as was indicated by Bahamas and also in the presentation by the World Bank representative, for some form of partnership at the level of the training of the high skilled workers who are in demand, a level of training that seeks to share the burden of that training. One. Two, we could possibly look at the fact that we're looking at medical, the healthcare sector, um, perhaps cooperation in that sector where medical institutions that are providing the service in the developed world in the OECD could have establishments established within the region, which would then address two factors. It would lend to the tourism-based structure of the economies in terms of income generation and everything else, and also retaining the skilled nationals within the region for the supply and availability to the domestic population, as well as to those offshore medical facilities that will be resident within the region. So we believe there is room for cooperation at the sectoral level, but at the national level, the government level, there needs to be an active program of support, the provision of scholarships for training of our own people in the region, so that both sides are able to benefit from this high-skilled labor, which is obviously in demand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preville. Now, this is the way in which we will proceed. I will take the questions from Costa Rica and Grenada, and I will then ask the panelists to respond. Following their responses, I will take the questions from Guatemala and St. Kitts and Nevis and request that the panelists respond. Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to Costa Rica.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to our panelists who are here with us. My question is for Mr. Jason. In his presentation, he talked about the role of the diaspora. Well, all member states want to promote scholarships abroad in the United States, Europe. How can we have a bridge so that those people who are educated abroad can go back to their native countries with incentives and tools so that they can contribute to the development of their native country and also to hook them up with a diaspora? I don't know if the World Bank has any studies on this. Are there any good practices in the CARICOM? And so delve a bit into the details of Mr. Jason's presentation.
I now offer the floor to Grenada.
Thank you, Chair, and thank the panelists for your very informative contributions. My questions, I want to relate the panelists' contribution speaking to the aging populations and the decrease in the number of workforce persons of younger age qualified. And that was related to the flow, brain drain, out from developing into OECD. So the question is, how do we relate the partnership that you speak about, not just to training, but to other infrastructure that would facilitate ease of the circular migration that you referred to? This question is really challenging whether or not we should be having solutions to bridge the gap only focus on training, or should these not be solutions focus more multifacetically on the reasons why the brain drain do not end up giving us the reverse? Concrete example, the aging population will not return to the developing countries if the health infrastructure is not adequate. That's an example. And the other question is just related to the OAS. So in the context of this persistent brain drain that we're speaking about in the health sector across the Americas, how can the OAS member states, particularly those of us who are small and vulnerable with our health systems, how can we leverage the same circular migration as a tool to strengthen the national health infrastructure in our countries? And what role can the inter-American cooperation play in facilitating this return and reintegration of health professionals? To the panelists, thank you.
Thank you very much, Grenada. The floor is now open for the responses from the panelists. Shall we begin with Mr. Makovich, please?
Thank you. I'll start addressing the questions by Costa Rica. Yeah, okay. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for the question. I think that there are many lessons about how we can facilitate the return of the diaspora and engagement with the diaspora to actually have people return and have circular migration. I've worked a lot in Europe and Central Asia, especially in the short term. There are tools that work, especially tax incentives. Spain has introduced some 10, 15 years ago, some reforms that have facilitated integration of migrants, but also has improved fiscal conditions for those who return. And this is also true in Italy. These are countries with low salaries, so it is really difficult to attract people back from foreign countries. And so in Latin America and the Caribbean, I don't think the gap is so large, but there is some gap. But once the fiscal or tax incentives were introduced, this helped the situation. And in Spain and Italy, the programs have been quite successful. But it has to be part of a package of reforms. There need to be tax incentives, but also there needs to be improvements in some different conditions. For example, we know that in generally speaking, those who return, those who do so voluntarily, usually have better performance at a work level because they have a great deal of experience. They need to have opportunities, of course, to be able to return, incentives to create businesses, for example, or work in different sectors. And with respect to Global Skills Partnership, I can speak about that when I answer Grenada's question.
Mr. Makovic. I now offer the floor to Mr. Marzak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yo voy a empezar y responder.
I'm going to offer a response to Costa Rica's question about how we can best work with the diaspora. Now, if you think about the propensity of migrants to starting a business here in the United States, migrants are more likely to open a new business, start a new business here in the U.S. Than non-migrants, twice as likely to start a new business than native-born citizens here in the United States. So there are opportunities for the diaspora to start businesses as tied with their country of origin. It might be an import business, importing a given product from their country. So this type of business among the diaspora presents an opportunity for migrants to preserve ties with their countries. Even creating jobs in their country of origin. So there are opportunities that we can avail ourselves of. This warrants a deeper analysis of the type of business that the diaspora usually starts in the U.S. and how that leads to keeping ties with their country of origin. This is a unique opportunity to help ensure that the way migrants work be increasingly circular.
Data on inter-American cooperation, I go back to my presentation and the importance of institutions like the Organization of American States, the importance of this particular meeting. As we look at the increasingly changing dynamics of migration across the hemisphere, it will be fundamental to see how we can work more collaboratively across member states, given the fact that, as I shared before, the U.S. has been traditionally, a top destination for migrants from the Caribbean, but those migration numbers, those migration flows are changing. And so getting ahead of the curve, what's happened historically is that we're trying to address a challenge, a problem that's been occurring for quite some time. But as we start to look at the changing flows of migratory trends across the hemisphere, how do we get ahead of those flows to come up with solutions specifically with regard to integration of migrants and their new countries. And I go back to the importance of recognition of skills partnerships. We talked about how that's already being done in the Caribbean, but there are huge opportunities across the region writ large to recognize the skills that migrants bring, and that helps to bring migrants into the listed economy, and that then thereby then also helps to generate greater circular migratory flows back with the country of original, the source country initially. So I think that this is a critical moment when we see the changing nature of migration policy across the region, to be able to ensure that this next generation of migrants, the next generation of countries in which migrants will be going to, that the skills that they bring are incorporated into the listed economy, and that the processes to be able to do so are as easy as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marzak. I now offer the floor to Mr. Preville.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think the points made earlier are very solid points in terms of the contribution into options for migrants. What is also clear is that based on the information shared this morning, that the OECD population is aging. And if that is the case, then the demand for our highly skilled nationals in the health sector in OECD countries will not decrease. It will continue to increase. So, what are the options? Uh, as I've indicated earlier, one option would be for the provision of that highly skilled service to be done within the region, as opposed to the skilled nationals leaving the region and providing it elsewhere. If we had cooperation and have cooperation to have those medical facilities established in the region, in member states in the region, where we already have free movement of the skill set in the region. So we're looking at perhaps creating within the region areas of excellence where um, investments from the OECD could be made within the region, where those health demands could be provided for from within the region. Uh, that is one of the approaches that could ensure that our people remain in the region while still meeting the needs that obviously exists in the OECD for the highly the skills and talent. Also, I think the presentation made earlier um, also highlights the critical element of trade and trade policy. Surely, if we have migrants from the region who have moved to OECD countries and have the incentive to invest in areas or businesses that are linked back to production and supplies from the region of goods, of services, then that would therefore mean there would be no need for further migration of nationals from the region to OECD countries if they are able to generate highly paid jobs in the region, and those jobs are providing goods and services of demand in the diaspora, in the OECD countries, facilitated by our diaspora community overseas. So investments by OECD investors within the region to support domestic production, which will be facilitated by diaspora overseas, is another means of addressing the creation of employment within the region without necessarily losing the skill set to the rest of the world. So I think these are some of the areas we can begin to look at: the trade area, the reinvestment area, especially in the health sector, are possibilities that can be explored.
I
Thank you, Chair.
thank, I thank you very much, Mr. Preville, for your intervention, your response. I am pleased to offer the floor again to Mr. Makovic so that he can respond to Grenada's questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks again to the representative of Grenada for the comments. I think it's a very important point, kind of addressing this issue in a kind of multidimensional way, and it requires, it's a complex issue, right, brain drain, and it requires multi-sectorial coordination, multi-sectorial actions, and again, a multidimensional mindset to find solutions, as you are pointing out. Also, the idea is that you don't want to invest in training for future generations in order for them to live again, right? And so that you actually reinforce brain drain, right? But coming to your point of what countries can do now, basically, I think one way of looking at that is like try to focus on, you know, the short run versus the long run, right? In the long run, strengthening skill systems, TVET, education providing institutions, these will reinforce the human capital at origin and will enable countries to match the local demand and the global demand. At the same time, these investments will have effect in the long run, like in 10, 15 years, right? And for instance, this is the case in countries like in Eastern Europe, like Romania, Hungary with the EU enlargement. Basically, you observed like a high outflows of medical doctors, for instance, but at the same time, the enrollment in the medical professions increased in those countries, right? So that you will see like an increased supply also for the local demand in the coming years. But what countries can do, like in the relatively short run, to address the flow? So one is what I was mentioning before in terms of incentives, right? It is something that can be implemented already to kind of attract back kind of human capital. Others are interventions in the labor market, like, for instance, improving all the conditions, especially for entry into formal jobs of the new generations, but also improving existing conditions, like for the workforce who is more subject to brain drain. For instance, I was in a seminar in Jamaica in April, and it was very interesting to hear from the Jamaican authorities all the problems that, let's say, people, especially women in the healthcare sector, face. The problems of excessive working hours, overloads, and like very, very tiring and demanding time shifts. So, of course, improving this condition and also and also wages that do not offer like a very let's say, promising growth that are kind of staggered. So improving the conditions at home, like through these interventions in the labor market at home, improving flexibility in the labor market, improving the doing business at home, are all elements that can help, you know, at the margin, improving the conditions also for returnees in the future, right? Because without improving, of course, conditions at home, it will be difficult to create this virtuous circle of circular migration. And then there is an important point of internal coordination. So this cannot be solved by one agency only. I mean, it's not just Minister of Education or Minister of Labor or Minister of Foreign Affairs, right? This requires high level of coordination among agencies in the origin countries, right? And also to achieve, you know, as was pointed out correctly before, you know, the vision of investing in some areas of excellence, right? That I think make total sense for the Caribbean region. And it could given also the comparative advantage of the English language. It could be, you know, the IT sector, for instance, or everything that relates to digital and technology, in addition of health. Of course, or it could be tourism, or it could be even, you know, the training professionals in the area of climate shock response, given the high exposure of the region to climate shocks, right? So this thinking about all this specialization and coordination require really a vision, and also I think this is kind of coming to also another point mentioned previously, this is like an important role, of course, for fora like this and like the Atlantic Council, but also for international organization and multinational organization, right? Because they can help, for instance, through lending operation in reinforcing institutions and systems at origin, and they also they can help convene, let's say, donors and partners from destination countries, like, for instance, like what we are doing now, you know, between Spain and Latin American countries in the example I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Makovic. I now offer the floor to Secretary Osborne so that she can respond to the propositions by Grenada. Secretary Osborne, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, distinguished delegates. I just wanted to touch on a few things that that was mentioned by the ambassador from Grenada, and how can we, and what we can offer as the OAS. I believe first, cooperation and partnerships, and we are trying to facilitate cooperation and the sharing of knowledge between and among our countries. And I will just highlight a few things, a few initiatives that are underway that can speak to how the diaspora in particular can give back, or how we can ensure that the knowledge that we are losing can return to our countries. One of the programs that was offered last year, in fact, was the ECHO program, a cooperation from Uruguay, and that is specific to the health sector. And what that allows us to do is, the model originates from New Mexico and has been replicated in some of the South American countries. Uruguay has offered it as a cooperation model that can be replicated in our countries, where health experts from the diaspora, from other countries, can lend their skills and their expertise to medical challenges that may be faced in our countries. That opportunity is still open. It's a mechanism that needs to be organized on the ground with the health sector in our countries to receive expertise. And one of the very good examples that Uruguay gave is where one patient in Uruguay was facing a diagnosis that could not be handled in country. And through cooperation and partnerships with MD Anderson in Houston and a few others, they were able to diagnose that problem remotely. And so it doesn't require people to move back, but with telehealth being what it is, there are opportunities to capitalize on those expertise that are outside of our countries. The important thing is for us to structure to receive that cooperation, and that's something that we are actively facilitating between and among our member states. I believe 5 CARICOM countries had raised their hands to begin replicating the ECHO model in their countries. Another area that we're building now is CooperaNet, the cooperation marketplace that has been established for exactly that purpose, the idea of sharing knowledge and experiences and expertise. And I refer specifically to the Ask an Expert section on CooperaNet. And what are we doing there? Again, what we are doing is enlisting expertise from across the hemisphere to help our countries with the development challenges that they may face. And so we want to encourage our diaspora as well to register on CooperaNet, the Ask an Expert section. We validate expertise, so you have to give us references that we can then validate, but you're registered there, and member states would have access to those experts on an ongoing basis. And again, we're not necessarily saying that everything is free, but should there be a requirement for that, or request for those expertise, that they're available, whether it be on a voluntary basis or through consultancies as well. And last week, we launched the OAS Scholarship Alumni Program. The OAS has been giving scholarships for over 60 years. And last week, what we've done is we launched that program to get our alumni to give back to our countries. We have been doing our latest numbers or recent numbers between 2,000 and 4,000 scholarships a year. So imagine the number of experts that we have among the OAS scholarship alumni, and they can also give back. And that is our way, again, of ensuring that even if you're not able to return to your country, having received an OAS scholarship, you have an opportunity to mentor. You have an opportunity to share your skills, to share your expertise through the Ask an Expert section of CoopRNet. And as far as the diaspora, we've been actively pursuing diaspora relationships within our MSME program. What we want there is to facilitate entrepreneurship, to facilitate the sharing of business skills, business development skills, given the fact that the MSME sector is the largest sector for all of the countries of the region. How do we use diaspora skills and how do we connect with the diaspora, importantly, if only for nostalgic goods, to get our diaspora to buy that which our countries are producing, to continue to spur economic development within the countries as well. So if they have young entrepreneurs who have new markets, particularly within the diaspora, then there's less a chance of them leaving their countries because they have economic activity that is rewarding for them. And finally, I believe what we're doing today, and I've taken notes in terms of cooperation, I really do believe that we need to continue this discussion on how we can better cooperate with some of the source countries so that we mentioned two of them, two of the biggest countries that we mentioned today, Canada and the US, are member states of the OAS. So the question is, how do we better work with our member states? And some of them are observer member states of the OAS. So that dialogue needs to continue, that discussion on how best to partner so we create win-win opportunities for both, I think is something that the OAS can play a critical role in facilitating. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretary Osborne. I'm now pleased to offer the floor to Guatemala and to St. Kitts and Nevis for posing their questions. In turn, Guatemala, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank our panelists for their presentations, which were quite illustrative. I think we agree that retaining human capital in large measure comes down to work opportunities aligned with skills and the aspirations of youth. That said, I would say in most of the countries of our region, there are big gaps between the educational systems, the real needs of the market, and the needs of industry that we are trying to attract for sustainable development. So within this context, I would ask the panelists, what concrete experiences have you seen in the region that can serve as a case study or case studies regarding public-private partnerships for technical training, vocational training, and university training as tied to or responsive to the needs of industry? Now, I think Secretary Osborne addressed this, how the OAS can better position itself to foster this type of initiative and partnership. Thank you.
Gracias, Guatemala.
Thank you, Guatemala.
Nevis, please.
Thank you, Chair and learned panelists. You have indeed deepened this discussion. We all know the problem, and we allocate resources to train our people, then they leave or do not return, not because they necessarily don't have any desire of doing so, but because we lack the capacity from an employment point of view to absorb them or competitively compensate them for the skills so developed. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we are concerned about our small population. So, this is an open question to the entire panel, and I must say that Dr. Osborne has addressed it to a certain extent in her intervention just now. But I wanted to know, to what extent do you believe that brain drain might be more of a development issue than a migratory one? And if this is so, how do we address that within our region when we all face the same problems? And again, thank you, Dr. Osborne, for beginning that discussion from my perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to the panelists for their response. Mr. Makovich, we'll begin with you, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. I'll start with Guatemala. Bueno, gracias por
I thank you for that question. What we've observed in the region is a long history of bilateral agreements. There's a track record of bilateral relations with destination countries, U.S., Canada, Europe. But these bilateral agreements have stressed mostly the farming activities. It's seasonal. There's much that still needs to be developed. It holds out much potential. But first, we have to open these bilateral relations to other fields, high demand industries in the domestic market and the foreign market beyond the farming sector. There's such a strong demanding in the agricultural sector. Clearly, that's not going anywhere, but we have to see this from the standpoint of development and consider what other skills a country wants to invest in the long term and how we can fashion a circular migration program around that through starting with human capital training. We're seeing the beginnings of this in other regions. Seeds have been planted, so to speak. The Philippines and Asia, Korea, with select migration from countries such as Indonesia to Japan. I addressed this in my presentation. For the care industry, manufacturing. So what we're seeing are some programs, but at a reduced scale. We've taken a look at the program between Colombia and Germany. It's not really a global partnership, but it is a bilateral agreement with a strong component of information, part of which is done in the country of origin and the rest in the destination country. Language training in German, mostly, but focused on the health care sector. There is a recent agreement between Colombia and Spain, which is a departure from the standard programs Spain has with Latin American countries, the ECHO program focused on agriculture, but it's taking on new forms. First responders, for example, still just getting started. And the report that we're going to be releasing at the end of the year, we will offer an assessment of that program between Colombia and Spain. Ecuador is building on that tradition of a bilateral agreement in the farming sector. Now with Spain, which over the last couple of years has broadened its bilateral relationship to include construction and transportation. The countries of origin face an uphill battle as far as training is concerned. And so, thus far, it's only been done on a small scale, but you have to look at the demand in the countries of origin. They have to be brought on board, involved, by way of validating the training that needs to be done in key sectors to ensure that in the future, people coming back from the country of destination through this circular model will actually have jobs waiting for them in that same field. And the destination country can also co-finance this circular migratory movement. We have to go beyond the traditional style bilateral agreements in which there isn't necessarily a training component to it. And that keeps there from being strong human capital development in the country of origin that would actually make this circular system work.
To the question from St. Kitts and Nevis. Okay. So I'll answering that quickly. I think I tend to agree with you. I mean, brain drain is a development issue broadly. It's not just kind of a secondary outcome of migration phenomenon. I'm saying so because you can observe brain drain even within a country. I mean, I come from Italy, and there are huge gaps between the northern region and the southern regions. And you see massive immigration, of course, of Italians. So you have a huge diaspora abroad. I think in the last 10 years, we lost around 140,000 tertiary education graduates all over the world. But there is a huge diaspora within Italy, right, between the south, which is much less developed, and the north, right? So in general, you really can address brain drain through a development lens, right? And to address that from a development perspective, you need to address the structural factors that determine brain drain. For instance, in Italy, one example is also crime and criminality at origin, right? That these, create difficulties for starting on business for like younger population. So people need to move in the north or move abroad, right, to start their own business. Or like everything which is related to the business environment, right? So addressing these structural factors, including the supply of skills and the quality of skills that the country is producing is key, right, to address the brain drain phenomenon in the long run. And then, of course, you can introduce migration policies and migration response that help, address partially these issues, like global skill partnership or incentives to facilitate return and mobilizing the diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makovec. Panelists, delegates, please allow me to make a slight adjustment to the order which I had previously asked you to agree to. I'm going to offer the floor to Dominica, and then I'll ask Mr. Marzak and Mr. Preville to respond, and also Mr. Makovec, in that order. Thank you very much. Dominica, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I think what you did is best because my issue and question is related to the point raised by my friend from St. Kitts and Nevis and partially addressed by Executive Secretary. I want to thank the panelists, and I also want to thank the CD team for this very timely and relevant issue. I'm a product of the public service system from more than 3-4 decades. And it seems to be a traditional practice to compartmentalize issues of importance to small, vulnerable states. We give them high recognition. We give high recognition to the negative national economic impact of brain drain on small island states. In organizations and for where direct economic support can be least addressed, than to treat with this matter in organizations and instances where financial support and better conditions on borrowing are actually addressed. For me, the elephant in the room still remains the collateral drain on the finances of governments of small states. the absence of measures to address the millions already spent and continue to be spent by governments of the region to train with scarce resources that are diverted from other critical social programs. CARICOM heads continue to lament the need for better and cheaper financing even today. What, therefore, in your opinion, can be done? That's addressed mainly to World Bank, but I would like the views of the other panelists. What, in your opinion, can be done to have these brain drain issues addressed more holistically by making them more fundamental conditions for the receipt of direct economic development support and better conditions for borrowing? Thanks.
Thank you, Dominica. I now offer the floor to Mr. Marzak. Mr. Marzak, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And rather than addressing each question separately, I'll address them together because I think the questions are very much interrelated, as a representative from Dominica noted with regard to the question from St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as even the question from Guatemala on public-private partnerships and how to better tie together education and industry together. I think I also agree with the representative from St. Kitts and Nevis on the fact that when I look at brain drain, it is very much an economic issue. Migration is push and pull factors, right? And so there are of course pull factors with higher wages. We talked about that previously, and that healthcare sector is noted from Barbados. But there are also push factors, and some of the push factors are how to provide greater economic opportunities within country, and that went back to my original presentation on the challenges, especially as more people leave, the ability to compete for that higher talent and also for economic growth. I think when we look at concrete solutions, one solution that comes to mind as a potential model for other countries is the partnership the Dominican Republic signed with Purdue University. And what that partnership is was a reflection of the fact, and going back to your question from Representative St. Kitts and Nevis, it was about finding a strategic area in which the Dominican Republic wants to grow its own industry, in this case, microchip and semiconductors, and looking at the expertise that Purdue University offers to be able to help the country to build that sector out even further, with the idea that that will help with talent retention within the country. And obviously that's a sector that has higher paying wages as well, thereby going to the fact that it minimizes some of the divide between origin country and recipient country, and that wage gap that we talked about previously with regard to the healthcare sector. And so when I look at kind of opportunities insofar as how to minimize the brain drain, one of those opportunities is about just looking at strategic industries that will potentially have higher wages, and finding those partnerships with the education sector, whether it's local education institutions or international education institutions, including those like Purdue University here in the United States. And I think even at a national level, some of the opportunities, some of the best examples I've seen is ensuring that universities are more plugged into what are the demands from industry. And oftentimes there's a divide between what universities are focusing on and what industry is seeking in regard to the types of jobs of today. But I think even more important when we look at the jobs of tomorrow, right? Because the labor force is changing dramatically, and my concern is that brain drain could even be accelerated further if there isn't the requisite actions taken to make sure that our populations in our hemisphere are prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. And so some of those, I think, internship opportunities and the connection really between local business and local universities is critical, as well as on the broader sense, public-private partnerships for economic development writ large. And because of the fact that brain drain is also, it's a migration issue, but it is very much, as you say, an economic development issue, how to further ease the public-private partnerships, reduce the bureaucratic processes, reduce the wait time to be able to move projects forward, because as those projects advance, there's greater economic opportunities locally, and that can help to provide stymie the desire, the incentive to leave. But I'll end just going back to the importance of those partnerships with universities. And also, U.S. universities or universities from other parts of the world, there's also, doesn't necessarily require having to travel to the United States. There's online education classes and others that can be facilitated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marisak, for your responses. I now offer the floor to Mr. Preville. Mr. Preville, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would go straight to the presentation made by St. Kitts and Nevis and to agree that when you look at the region's migration patterns and the drivers of migration, they are basically development in nature. It's migration driven by the need to earn income and to increase people's standard of living. And therefore, Chair, what has CARICOM done to help treat with that? Well, we have, as we speak, economic partnership agreements, that is the CARI Forum, which is the CARICOM and the Dominican Republic together. We have economic partnership agreements with Europe. We have it with the United Kingdom. We have one-way free trade agreements right now with the United States, with Canada. We have a number of bilateral agreements with Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba. All of these are meant to cause the attraction of investment and business within the region. This has not worked as it was anticipated. So, on the one hand, we are very clear that the demand for our skilled workers, especially in the health sector and others, will continue to grow in the OECD demand-driven economy. So there is no getting away from that. The question is, to what extent are these countries utilizing the agreements we already have in place to cause investment and economic activity within the CARICOM region to take place, to cause higher income or higher wage related employment to remain in the region? To what extent are we seeing efforts in that direction, cooperation in that direction? And I think, Chair, this is really where we need to put some emphasis, because I don't believe we will be able to um, um, restrict the movement of highly skilled persons. Everyone knows that the data shows that when it comes to labor migration, that it is skilled and highly skilled persons who move the most. And in fact, that is why you have bilateral labor agreements that capture mainly agricultural sector and such sectors where people need a structured framework to move, because they don't move on their own because they're unsure. The skilled workers are sure of themselves. They know how to navigate. And therefore, they do not need a bilateral labor agreement. So the point here is, if we are to treat with the brain drain as we're seeing it, it requires us to make use of a number of tools. The tools we already have in place in terms of the agreements we have with the developed countries to invest in the region, to create sustainable jobs in the region, jobs that are related to and mitigate global warming, clean jobs in the region. If we are seeing that happening, then as the ambassador from St. Kitts indicates, has indicated, the economic driver or the economic factor that is driving demand for our workers would no longer exist as such. Chair, just to indicate also that within CARICOM, one of the ways using the OAS arrangements that CARICOM has been able to mitigate some of the loss of its skilled labor in the health sector is by working very closely with Cuba. So on the one hand, we have a number of our workers, our health professionals leaving, going to the OECD countries, and we have the benefit of working with Cuba through the OAS system to sort of do some partial replacement of that skill set. So in a sense, we are already seeing cooperation taking place within the OAS framework in one particular sector, that's the health sector. But we need to see more. But more fundamentally, there needs to be a reinvestment by the OECD in the CARICOM region so that we would see a stymieing of that flow of our people from the region to the OECD demand-driven countries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preville. I now offer the floor to Mr. Makovec for a brief intervention regarding Dominica's question. Mr. Makovec.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just would like to address the question on improving conditions for borrowing that was raised by the representatives from Dominica. Because I think that's kind of an important potential role for multinationals and development financing institutions. So typically what we see in the region in this type of dialogue, countries of origin are kind of reluctant to borrow to finance programs that kind of are focused on circular migration, because I mean it's difficult to find, governmental worries that this can be counterproductive for them, because this might be seen as kind of financing additional brain drain, right? So why, as a country of origin, should I borrow, to make more people leave, right? So there is a different way to address this, and this is linked to what I was mentioning before as kind of building operations that can help strengthen systems at the origin. So, for instance, these could be operations that finance jobs program in countries of origin, like thinking about a broad program, for instance, for jobs and skills for marginalized youth or for vulnerable youth in countries of origin. And this would be about strengthening training institution, strengthening the link with the private sector at home, providing better opportunities and also entrepreneurship opportunities, maybe wage subsidies to facilitate access to formal jobs. But one component of that could be financing kind of safe labor mobility pathways. And multilateral institutions could convene and participate in this financing, for instance, donors from destination countries. So there could be a coexistence between a lending operation and a grant operation. So let's say if you have, I'm inventing numbers here, a lending operation of $100 million to address, to finance jobs and skills for youth in origin countries, you might be able to attract $10 million from a donor that is interested in financing, like, let's say, a specific component on bilateral migration and global skill partnership. So this, let's say, as a consequence of this, this immediately reduces actually the cost of borrowing, because instead of having an operation of $100 million, you will have an operation of at the cost of $90 million, because the grant lowers your borrowing cost. So I think that's the mindset that we need to kind of discuss, or with which we need to discuss, let's say, at the regional level. And I think as a suggestion, possibly going forward, it would be also important to have this type of fora extended also with the participation of Minister of Finances, for instance, that are key to, for mobilizing financing to this type of agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now come to the end of our interactive dialogue, and I see that there are no further questions. Therefore, on behalf of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development, I thank Messrs. Makovec, Preville, and Marsac for their informative presentations. Gentlemen, your contributions today have enriched our understanding of the issue and have pointed to some of the responses which we may consider for addressing it. We look forward to continuing our engagement as we collectively navigate the challenges associated with this phenomenon of brain drain. I thank you very much. I now invite member states to share their experiences, policy responses, recommendations, and offers of cooperation. Member states are kindly reminded that interventions should be limited to 5 minutes. I don't think that I'm going to bell anyone this morning. I'm going to ask you to stick to your 5 minutes. I'm now pleased to offer the floor to Costa Rica.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to thank you for including this item on our agenda and for having invited our distinguished panelists who were here with us today. I see that they are saying farewell now. This issue is very important for our delegation. We believe that the loss of human capital is not only a structural challenge, but also an opportunity to rethink our human development policies as well as policies with respect to innovation. With respect to brain drain, this is not just an economic or political matter. It is a project for national renewal and demands confidence in our institutions and faith in a better tomorrow. In Costa Rica, we are facing many challenges. The study done by IPATIA, which was part of our status or condition of the nation with respect to science, innovation, and technology, shows the lack of incentives to enable professionals to find a circle or to find a sector where science and innovation is vibrant. So we need incentives to have people return. We need also to have investment in infrastructure. However, these challenges are not just found in Costa Rica. Latin America and the Caribbean share similar realities, not very competitive salaries, limited professional development opportunities, insatisfaction with corruption and educational systems that are not up to par with the 21st century. All of these are push factors and lead to people looking for a better life elsewhere. Despite this, Costa Rica has bet on strengthening the education of human talent in technology, clean energy, health sciences, languages, aligning its educational supply with the opportunities in our labor market. For example, the Alliance for Bilingualism creates opportunities for young people and also creates links to our country. Programs like the Parque de Libertad and others have inclusive entrepreneurship opportunities offered to young people, and this has impact. We recognize that to be effective in this sense, we must have integral strategies that address not only economic dimensions, but also social, political, and infrastructure dimensions. Tax incentives can help to reduce gaps, but we need a stable environment. Also, a high quality education is a sine qua non, but is not sufficient to encourage professionals to stay or to return. In this efforts to retain human capital, it is important to have real opportunities offered in rural areas and for women who historically have had difficulties in accessing the labor market. Also to invest in knowledge. This means strengthening local capacities, creating innovation environments outside of the capital, and creating conditions which allow women to realize themselves under equal conditions. This not only reduces structural gaps, but also strengthens society and makes us more representative in our country. So this requires time and commitment. So we encourage all member states in this council to prioritize investment in education, in a new curriculum, and support of foreign institutions and universities. This should go hand in hand with strengthening the rule of law. We need to reverse the brain drain. We need a brain gain. We must have active links between our professionals with their native countries, as we heard with respect to the diaspora, and their knowledge can lead to sustainable development and change. This is something that if we coordinate, we can create opportunities where before there were none. Thank you very much.
Gracias, embajador.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. You went over 12 seconds. Wonderful. But 5 minutes, 12 seconds.
Brazil.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to start by congratulating you for having chosen today's topic. I also thank the panelists and all the different presentations which have offered very germane viewpoints and information. Just as all the countries of our region, Brazil has also faced the issue of brain drain with the emigration of skilled people. To address this problem, we have crafted public policies focused mostly on retaining and bringing people back, especially in the fields of research. The main incentives that we have come up with to keep people in our country, we have research scholarships or monies available for graduation, post-graduation courses, and the CAPS, a higher education program, as well as research through the National Technological Scientific Development Fund, as well as the National Council of Scientific Development and Technology, CNPQ, as well as different projects and studies under another program to ensure the employability or employment for these researchers. We have a program that seeks out highly qualified, highly skilled researchers to place them in the public sector and other jobs. We have spurred the development of innovative programs such as Connect Startup and More Innovation Program from the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. International cooperation is also a very important strategy to retain talent. The government of Brazil has developed mechanisms favoring the circulation of through different coordination programs and international agreements and academic mobility programs, the Mercosur program, to retain talent. Now, different measures have been adopted to encourage people to come back. Brazil Knowledge Program is a case in point, as well as state development programs. We recognize that in some specific cases, researchers staying abroad can also benefit Brazil. Now, we have the CAPS program, which offers other ways for researchers who left the country to pay back short of returning. The International Network Program and the collaboration with Brazilian institutions through distance teaching, partnerships, and offering guidance orientation from abroad. Now we have different We see that the academic diaspora has a very important role to play, as other speakers have said. Many people who have gone abroad are very grateful to their country of origin. Even though they don't plan on coming back, they seek out ways to pay back. We seek to mobilize the diaspora and to offer a path for scientists to continue contributing to science in our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. I'm now pleased to offer the floor to El Salvador. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. We'd like to thank our panelists for their presentation. Our country is aware that currently migration is changing and that each country faces a different reality. Despite progress made, we are facing challenges to have shared but differentiated responsibility with respect to human mobility. In order to develop strategies to address the structural reasons which lead to irregular migration, we have privileged an integral addressing of this matter, which promotes regular, safe, and orderly migration. In that context, the Labor Mobility Program is a coordinated program that works with agencies, the international community, and others to have a well-managed migration. And there means that there are hiring processes with businesses in an orderly way, a monitoring of working conditions, and then integration of those who return. And we see that we can have inverse migration to avoid brain drain and try to take advantage of people who have been trained abroad, attract people back to our country to help our development. El Salvador has developed also an internship program with diaspora so that students who are part of the diaspora can actually apply in our country the capacities that they have developed abroad by working in key Salvadoran agencies. This program encourages a transfer of knowledge in tourism, education, public works, culture, is to incentivize gradually Salvadorian human talent. And this would help us develop. And we received 140 applications in our first edition. We also have a law in this respect to favor the repatriation of Salvadorians. And we have a program called Salvador Mas, which is to also help diaspora come back. Chair, dialogue and exchange of experiences are important and are an opportunity to be able to move forward in our states through regional cooperation and find synergies amongst countries, civil society, the academic sector, associations of the diaspora, and other key actors for high-value inclusive markets. This offers value so that professionals can prosper in our countries. El Salvador has privileged the well-being of our Salvadorans. We are investing in their development. We are working to create a solid foundation so we can have economic growth that is inclusive and fair. We reiterate the commitment of our country to support in our country, based on our reality, the retention of human capital and the identification of cooperation to strengthen human capital in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, El Salvador. Now offer the floor to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Chair. Chair of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development, Ambassador Luan Gilchrist, Permanent Representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Permanent Representatives, Executive Secretary of the Secretariat for Integral Development, alternates, guest speakers, staff at the Secretariat, good morning. Chair, this is a topic that has sparked broad debate for generations in the Caribbean community and is increasingly at the center of the development agenda. The exodus of trained and skilled professionals attracted to higher prospective returns abroad and invited by immigration policies that specifically targets them enriches foreign nations immeasurably, but impinges on the long-term development of the source nations, draining their pool of local talents. Conversely, the multidimensional vulnerabilities of the small island developing states push professionals and trained workers out of the islands to high-income destinations. The situation is alarming, Chair. Accordingly, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been flexible in its development strategy, cognizant of its changing development circumstances. Its investment in education and the education revolution on a whole propelled workers to pursue high-value opportunities abroad in the absence of such locally. Concomitantly, this situation is beneficial and transformational. The diaspora is an asset that plays a significant role in developing opportunities locally. Besides remittance flows, one of the potential conduits of their capacity is to develop local entrepreneurial spirit through business incubators, angel investing, or joint ventures. They also help to establish business and trade networks between our country and the host countries, given their familiarity with market opportunities, preferences, and business contacts. Another channel that shows potential is the exchange of researchers visiting students and lecturers program for the purpose of training, expertise, and knowledge transfer, and also the provision of robust educational opportunities through scholarship programs to defray the cost of higher educational attainment abroad. Chair, we must identify ways to collaborate and seek deeper diaspora engagement and cooperation to harness the full potential of the brain drain phenomenon so that all parties involved can benefit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm now pleased to offer the floor to Mexico. Mexico, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mexico promotes a humanitarian model of human mobility, which places people front and center, promoting the structural or addressing the structural causes of migration, seeking to diversify the means of regularizing a migration and to address irregular or to assist irregular groups with a human rights approach. It applies a multi-sector, pluridimensional, responsible, inclusive, cross-cutting, gender perspective approach, which makes it possible to be in keeping with international and national laws, following other initiatives such as the World Pact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, as well as the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. The so-called brain drain of skilled migrants and highly skilled migrants is something that for which we have to take into account that there are a host of factors leading to this. This is closely tied to the new productive models and of farming, as well as the innovative ecosystem. In the case of Mexico, more than 11 million people live abroad. In 97% of these cases, they live in the U.S. According to figures from 2023, migration from Mexico, those with higher education, accounts for 9% of that overall figure and has undergone a steady growth since the 90s. The U.S. continues to be the main destination for skilled migrants, although there are other destinations such as Canada, Switzerland, Spain, and even Colombia. This is a trend that stands out for those Mexican citizens with a master's or a graduate degree, undergraduate degree in education, finance, business, health, and technological and scientific disciplines, especially in mathematics and engineering, according to studies based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Mexicans with a college degree in 1990 have reached to 1.9 million in 2020. That means that there was a 8.5-fold rise in size, especially those with a college degree being the ones that whose numbers grew the most. Now, we see that among women, Mexico holds the fourth position of migrants with a postgraduate degree after India, China, South Korea in the United States. This underscores how important these migrants are in the economic development of the country. Those with a postgraduate degree shows a very active educational level and a low level of unemployment, with 79.1% of graduates being economically active, and 86% of which have jobs. And this is a figure that can continue to rise in fields of high demand, such as engineering, health, and other fields. The migration policy of Mexico is that we stay in touch with our immigrants abroad through the consulate network that we have in the United States, the largest consular network that we have, and also through the Institute of Mexicans Living Abroad, which offers multiple service windows to assist them, especially keeping up ties with the highly skilled Mexicans living abroad through a very inclusive approach that the government of Mexico has used also as a means of furthering its own development. We gauge the impact of the programs we've rolled out to reduce the likelihood of our connationals actually leaving Mexico, ours being one of the countries with the highest rate of immigration in the region. Now, the challenge we face is to retain our skilled workers. OAS ought to be a place for dialogue and exchange of experiences on best practices, promoting public policies and strategies for addressing the migrant community, and such that migration be viewed as a choice, not a need. It's very important also that we harness this population to further development of our country by ensuring encouraging their return by recognizing the degrees that they have received abroad in our country, as well as we also compile data about the skilled migrant population. Thank you, Ambassador. I offer the floor to the delegation of Colombia. Thank you, Chairman. Delegates, Colombia recognize that brain drain is a high-impact challenge in the region. Our country has wagered on turning this into an opportunity through comprehensive public policies, turning it into an opportunity for a circular movement whereby we retain these highly skilled workers. First, we underscore the role of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, which has fostered policies for advanced training to encourage the return through national doctorate program abroad. We offer scholarships encouraging people who have studied abroad to return to Colombia. Also, ties between the academic sector in our country and researchers has been bolstered so that ecosystems can be found here by those who we would like to encourage to return. We have a program for science in Colombia, Colombia Científica, which is a case in point, which brings together research centers, universities, and focuses on high-impact areas such as health, energy, farming, and others. Its structure seeks to tie those professionals who have been trained and work abroad to national institutions. Thus far, more than 100 different projects have been created, and in which we have also encouraged patents. We've also promoted a scientific diaspora program through platforms such as the CALDAS network, connecting researchers abroad with national institutions of education, such that they can take part in offering support for thesis students. This program of circular researchers enables them to be connected here. Now, we have also adopted different concrete mechanisms. For example, in Article 158 of our tax law allows for up to 100, that there be a tax break for those who invest in areas of science and technology. This encourages startups for returnees. We'd have their program whereby seed capital programs be made available for anyone who has any type of business plan that encouraging them to open their business in our country. Now, this calls for retaining not just a talent, but to create conditions to bring talent back and to ensure that those living abroad are tied to productive enterprises in our country. We follow best practices, and we encourage that there be a hemisphere-wide program for retention and harnessing. I give the floor to Ecuador. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Madam Chair, representatives, alternates, authorities of city, and everyone here in the room, I thank the panelists for their very worthwhile presentations and for bringing to us a topic of such importance, for reaching importance to the countries of our region. We thank the chair of the city and the secretariat for addressing this topic, which is increasingly important given the impact that it has and the opportunities that it offers, this trend of human capital in our countries. This is a very important venue for us to foster public policies that would enable our citizens to further develop their skills in our countries, offering venues of cooperation between our countries in order to keep people from leaving their countries of origin. Brain drain, as we call it. Now, our country is a country of origin and destination, and we therefore have implemented public policies seeking to ensure workers' rights to improve their quality of life and to meet development goals, enabling people, or us to rather, address this problem and also to identify opportunities for cooperation to avoid brain drain and to spur opportunities for further development in our country. So we have in this vein different laws such as income parity and the Violet program, which seeks out lending opportunities for women, economic opportunities and job creation, and the circular migration program. The government of Ecuador is fully aware that the unemployment rate and underemployment are the main cause of emigration. That's why all the actions that we implement seek out to enhance opportunities in our labor market, creating job opportunities. Among the main activities we have carried out are reforms in education in keeping with the needs of the labor market and trends in technology, greater investment in science, technology, innovation, earmarking resources to create job opportunities, and also promoting new jobs, creating new jobs. Now, in the training programs, we could also include aspects tied to entrepreneurship and technology, and to help young entrepreneurs face challenges and to foster sustainable development, as well as offering incentives and partnerships with schools and postgraduate specialization programs. The Secretariat of Education, Science and Technology and Innovation, Senecit, and the UNDP program have underwritten a co-financing program to foster science and research programs with an investment of $4 million through 2026, as I said. It's important for there to be mechanisms that would foster a mutually beneficial relationship between destination and countries of origin through circular migration programs that are safe and overseen to ensure a safe relationship between the two countries, and just as we heard from the Speaker of the World Bank when he showcased Ecuador as being a good example of this, offering different scholarships for graduate and undergraduate programs, safe return programs, job placement opportunities, temporary job placement with guaranteed return, certification, as well as the financing of projects in innovation, science, technology, just by way of some of the programs that go to show that you can generate investment in the country by encouraging young entrepreneurs. And this cooperation is important to create jobs. And so the government of Ecuador has offered different incentives to drive the creation of jobs to help keep people in our country. Public investment in research and development and innovation needs to be brought into line with the needs of the private sector. That's why the Ministry of Labor is doing just that, encouraging programs of that are 8 hours a day, given the loss of talent we see throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. This council ought to play a leading and transformative role in creating structural conditions that would enable us to retain skilled workers and to create jobs for skilled workers according to the needs of each state through public policies that would invite private investments in areas such as higher education, renewable energies, artificial intelligence, and other areas of technology that would offer opportunities for further development of our economy and job creation. And this would also be best served by creating good or adopting good practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ecuador. I now offer the floor to Chile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The panelists aren't here anymore, but I do thank them for their presentations, especially I thank you for the dialogue and all the questions posed by the delegates have all been quite worthwhile for us to address this challenge. We can't address this matter in an isolated way, given how complex it is when we speak of retaining national talent and those already living abroad to offer them good job opportunities, higher pay, and opportunities to further and develop their professions in our local markets is important. So there has to be a comprehensive approach to this. And that's why I want to share with you what we're doing in Chile. I think it's very important to underscore also, for example, reducing the workday, raising salaries, and also Social Security systems needing to be reformed are part of this. And also to, we've got a program to spur academic talent as well in our country. For the last 20 years, it has been supporting high-performing students, especially those that are most economically vulnerable, to bring them into tertiary or higher education and to make sure that they stay in school and that they are channeled into higher education. The Speaker Markovich, in one of his responses, raised the Chile Scholarship Program, of which he was a beneficiary 50 years back. Now, when the price of copper was higher than usual back then, what Chile did was to invest in thousands of students in some of the best, placing them in some of the best universities throughout the world to bring them, after they graduated, back to Chile and put them to work. Now, 15 years on, we've learned a lot of important lessons when we think of how efficient this program is. This program reproduced some of the structural problems of Chile. We saw that in some of its shortcomings. And so it was very highly centralized regarding who would be chosen, for example. That was a centralized process. And sometimes this served more the demand of those who offered nominees for the program, and also for those in a doctoral program, they had a hard time coming back into Chile, in which the university system is quite limited in its size, and given the size of our country, to train thousands of people in doctorate degrees abroad. There really weren't enough jobs in Chile for them to come back to. So to invest the money that we got from this economic boom, investing in these children, bring them back to work in Chile, we first have to look at how we're going to develop our domestic economy as a means of retaining better the talent that was trained abroad. So what are we doing right now? We're engaging in dialogue between science and business and education sectors, such that university training be in constant dialogue with the market to ascertain what the private sector's needs are, to strengthen the ties between researchers and businesses, thereby multiplying opportunities in Chile through this virtuous circle. So what else is important for me to share in the next minute? The technological infrastructure needs to be built up. That's very important. That also has to be done in keeping or in such a way that we can foster startups so that these highly skilled professionals can stay in our country, and to offer enticements, blandishments for them to stay here, create their businesses, and then ultimately perhaps export. And also that's another way of avoiding brain drain. And also making sure that we have a means of validating those academic programs that immigrant students have pursued abroad, so that when they come back, they can apply that knowledge here. Thank you.
I now offer the floor to the Dominican Republic.
Thank you and good afternoon. I would like to thank the chair of this council for convening this meeting. We're also very grateful to all of the panelists for the very worthwhile information that they have offered us, and we have taken note of that information. Madam Chair, brain drain is something that is increasingly affecting emerging economies in a global context in which labor mobility has risen. Brain drain has a negative impact on social and economic developments in our countries, given that it leads or entails a loss of knowledge that could contribute to the development and growth of our nations, giving rise to a gap in the availability of skilled professionals, and making it harder for key sectors to fully develop. In the Dominican Republic, this phenomenon represents one of the most worrisome challenges that we face, evidenced by the high number of trained students that go to other countries, given the lack of opportunities at home, the fact that their training isn't appreciated, low salaries, and their desire for a better workplace or better working conditions. And so they seek out to improve their lot in life by going abroad and applying their talent in those businesses abroad that appreciate them. So it's very important to understand that brain drain as a term refers usually to those who move to other countries seeking out better conditions. However, after the COVID-19 pandemic, what we see is that skills and knowledge can actually be transferred digitally, virtually, and this has sped up the flow of information, making it even easier for brain drain to happen, for talent to seep out of the country. And so this goes beyond just creating jobs as a means of addressing this problem. We have to invest in talent and to contribute to building communities in which education be the foundation of growth and everyone's well-being. The Dominican Republic recognizes how important it is for public and private sectors to work together to strengthen the education systems and thereby create opportunities that would retain our talent. Given this challenge, our government has crafted a clear path forward to build a country in which our young people can fully develop their potential and thrive in their own land, their own country. These initiatives to tackle this problem, we have the 1424 program, which seeks to promote socioeconomic inclusion of young people between 14 and 24 years of age who are not either in school or the labor market, and they are from highly vulnerable households. We want to broaden and diversify the offering of jobs, and through the National Institute of Technical Professional Training, we offer such a program. We are modernizing the ITLA Technological Institute of the Americas, as well as the community technological centers, which have a transformed vocational and technical education, and also developing or encouraging semiconductor chip industries in our country, Chip Driver being a case in point, which seeks to hire skilled workers to fully avail ourselves of this opportunity. So we do recognize the need to continue creating opportunities that would encourage young people to educate themselves and to contribute to the progress of our nations. And to do this, it's necessary for there to be a more equitable distribution of the gains and benefits offered by businesses in keeping with the current legislation of each country, to foster also a good workplace and that there be job stability, and to invest in education, especially technical vocational training, to enhance working conditions and to promote a culture of well-being and equity are all necessary steps for us to build more prosperous, inclusive, and resilient nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominican Republic. I now offer the floor to Paraguay.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the Paraguayan delegation, we would like to thank you for allowing us to address this essential issue, brain drain and retention of human talent, as well as their training. We thank the panelists for their interesting presentations we have taken due note there. Paraguay recognizes that brain drain is a structural challenge, especially for developing economies like ours. However, we also believe that with political will and regional cooperation, we can turn this into a strategic opportunity. One of the pillars of our national policy is the National Scholarship Program, Carlos Lopez, where we give scholarships for postgrads abroad, but students must return. 89% of those that have received scholarships are in Paraguay working, and they're doing it in this sector they were trained in. This is very visible in the public sector. Many of these professionals have strategic positions in public policy positions and in the educational sector. But we know we still face challenges, especially to have better working conditions so that people do not emigrate once again. We have collaboration networks amongst professionals and also mechanisms to help those who have received scholarships to integrate back into sectors in Paraguay. To address structural causes of immigration, Paraguay has an inclusive industrial policy within part of our 2030 National Development Plan. This incentivizes formalization of employment, training, and also promotion of technology, agribusiness, and renewable energy. We believe that the response cannot just be retention, but strategic mobilization of talent. The Paraguayan diaspora can be an ally in our development, together with international cooperation. We encourage member states to cooperate to strengthen networks of talent abroad, to have circular programs and have a shared vision with respect to mobilizing knowledge in our region. Thank you.
Paraguay, I now offer the floor to Peru.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to begin by thanking you for convening this enriching meeting with respect to a very complex issue, the brain drain in our region. And I'd like to thank our panelists. As mentioned, immigration of professionals is an increasing concern for our region, and we face the challenge of retaining this talent. In Peru, we recognize the best strategy to stop brain drain is creating opportunities for professionals so that they can develop their talents in our countries. We want to point out some specific initiatives and best practices which shows what the Peruvian state is doing in this sense. First of all, the National Program for Scholarships gives access to tertiary education for students with scarce resources, but ensures that they come back to Peru. We also have the Scholarship President of the Republic. This finances master's degrees and doctorate degrees abroad, but they must come back to Peru to help our development. Secondly, the National Council for Innovation and Science has mechanisms for helping returned migrants, initiatives such as including researchers in networks. So we have cooperation amongst countries. Peru has also promoted talent in strategic sectors through programs like Reto Bio, or Startup Peru, which provides monies and technical training. These have been also founded by many professionals who came back to Peru. We believe that cooperation is key. We want frameworks that promote collaboration. We know that our returned migrants are important for development. We need an exchange of knowledge, circular mobility, and also investment in training. Thank you.
Peru, we offer the floor now to Guatemala.
Thank you very much, Chair. The delegation of Guatemala recognizes the distinguished panelists and thank them for their presentations. We agree that to stop brain drain means that we can take advantage of our human capital. This is an urgent challenge, and we must address this in an integral way. We have a model centered on people under our National Development Plan and our national policy. In this framework, the demographic boon is at the center. We have one of the youngest populations in the region. 60% of our people are under 30. This is a singular opportunity, but we must race against time. For this reason, we are trying to strengthen our human capital from a young age. We're investing in nutrition for children and education. This is a priority. We have a national crusade for nutrition, and we are going to communities that historically have been excluded. We need cognitive development when children are young if we want future generations that are highly skilled. We need a new curriculum. We need better teacher training. We have a scholarship program for the future that we are promoting. In its first month, we have hundreds of young people who have been able to benefit from this. And we are trying to align our education with the market, both in Guatemala and outside. Now, more than 70% of the jobs in Guatemala are in the informal sector, and that creates uncertainty. So we have active policies to try to promote formal employment. We have a small and medium-sized enterprise policy. We offer technical assistance, protection of IP, and we have a national strategy to attract direct foreign investment. We are trying to integrate our MSMEs in global chains in services, information technology, clean energy sectors. We have also the program for First Jobs. This is for young people between the ages of 18, 24 years of age. This is an apprenticeship program. This allows them to develop skills, and we can integrate young people into the labor market. We know that migrants can transform our country. They have skills they have obtained when they were abroad. They can come back and they can help different sectors. We are trying to help them return in a dignified way. We believe that their integration can help our local economies and help our society, our social fabric. We have a vision of human security, protect rights, dignity, life, and to this end, we need a strong state, but we need also cooperation with different sectors, the private sector, and we recognize the key role of the OAS as a platform. Initiatives in education through scholarship programs have been valuable tools to facilitate professional and educational development. Young America's Business First also has helped us to develop entrepreneurship, and Trust for the Americas has also helped digital training for vulnerable youth. Chair, we are convinced that the best migratory policy is one where we give opportunities so people can stay in their country of origin so that they don't need to emigrate. We reiterate our commitment to this, and we want to actively cooperate with other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guatemala. I'm now pleased to offer the floor to St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies and esteemed colleagues, I greet you according to the normal protocols. St. Kitts and Nevis, like other Caribbean nations, has historically seen a substantial portion of its educated workforce leave for more developed countries. For us specifically, historical data indicates a significant outflow of skilled individuals. So, why does this happen? The reasons are a complex combination of push and pull factors. Push factors often include limited local job opportunities, matching specific skills, and sometimes a desire for broad experiences and advanced training not readily available at home. On the other hand, pull factors from developed countries are strong. Higher wages, better professional development prospects, access to cutting-edge technology and research, and often more robust social services and infrastructure. Chair, the impact of this exodus is profound. When our brightest minds and most skilled professionals leave, we lose critical human capital, essential for national development. This can lead to shortages in vital sectors like healthcare, education, public administration. Imagine the impact on our hospitals if our doctors and nurses were to leave. The impact on our schools if our best teachers seek opportunities abroad. This loss can hinder innovation, economic diversification, and the overall progress of our nation. It also represents a significant return on investment loss, as the resources spent on educating these individuals don't fully benefit our economy. However, it's not all doom and gloom, Chair and colleagues. St. Kitts and Nevis recognizes the importance of addressing brain drain, and so there is a growing focus on fueling development at home while engaging with our diaspora. This engagement was formalized through the establishment over 2 decades ago of the Returning National Secretariat that facilitates the return of our drained human capital. There's a concerted effort to create a more attractive environment at home. This includes resettlement assistance, incentivizing sustainable job creation, diversifying our economy beyond traditional sectors, invested in resilient healthcare and education infrastructure with a focus on ITC, and fostering skills development through vocational training programs. Ultimately, combating brain drain is about creating a thriving, resilient, and opportunity-rich society where our citizens feel empowered to contribute their talents at home. It's a long-term endeavor, but by fostering strategic partnerships, embracing innovation, prioritizing the well-being and professional growth of our people, St. Kitts and Nevis can turn this challenge into an opportunity for brain gain, while our brightest minds return, bringing with them new skills and experiences and enriching our nation for generations to come. May it please you, Chair.
Thank you, St. Kitts and Nevis. I now offer the floor to Grenada.
Thank you, distinguished chair, esteemed colleagues. Glad for this opportunity to contribute to the dialogue on strategic action for addressing brain drain through talent retention and cooperation. Thank the panelists as well for their meaningful and for their very informed presentations. Grenada too has long contended with the complex impacts of skilled emigration, commonly what we call the brain drain. From education and healthcare to the public service and even the digital economy, we see the effects of the outflow of talent and capacities. But we also are deeply aware that our diaspora represents not just a loss, but a powerful asset for national renewal. And in this spirit and in this few minutes we have, I'd just like to share that we have taken deliberate steps to reposition our approach to this. Central to this is the National Diaspora Policy, which is now in its final stages and being reformed. The policy enshrines the view that our diaspora is not peripheral, but integral to our development, whether our citizens are at home or abroad. It outlines a clear mechanism to facilitate engagement, investment, knowledge transfer, and return migration, circular migration, as it was mentioned during the panel, temporary or permanent. The policy is implemented through the Grenada Diaspora Advisory Council, which is a globally representative body of professionals advising on long-term development priorities. It has already proven an effective bridge between the state and the Grenadian communities abroad. But policy must be backed by action. And for this, again, we just give an example. A tangible example is Grenada's recent partnership with Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. Through a formal cooperation agreement, Grenadian experts and diaspora physicians are collaborating with Mount Sinai's specialists to review our national health system and advise on the design of a modernized health sector administration. This kind of partnership not only strengthens national institutions, but exemplifies a kind of diaspora-linked cooperation that can bridge persistent development gaps through the brain drain phenomenon. As we move forward and taking into consideration some of the recommendations made during the session, I'd just like to mention some of the pillars for the focus that are critical for transforming the brain drain into a brain gain. The circular migration pathways supported by policies that recognize foreign experience and enable returning professionals to reintegrate with minimal red tape, with little or no bureaucracy. Sector-specific cooperation agreements, such as the one I just mentioned, Mount Sinai Partnership, which are deliberate, which are focused, and which are aimed at sustainable internal development complementary to what the emigration would have vacuumed out. Institutional capacity building to ensure that the home systems are attractive enough to retain and absorb skilled nationals, but they can also attract foreign nationals for the development that can be had, as well as service recipients because of the quality of the service locally. And regional collaboration, where we take at heart and are very happy for some of the examples that Executive Secretary reminded us of during the session that are already available, so that we do not have to reinvent the wheel, is something that we must keep in mind all the time. Sharing models, pooling resources, and advocating for ethical recruitment standards across our hemisphere. With this, Madam Chair, we believe the time is ripe indeed to elevate the conversation beyond just the loss and bring it to one of leverage, where we stand ready to collaborate with each other and to build on the best practices that we have shared here and we continue to experience together. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Grenada. Since there are no additional requests for the floor, I extend my gratitude to Member States for their offers of cooperation and contributions to today's discussion. I further propose that CD express its appreciation to our invited experts for their participation and instruct the Secretariat to compile a summary of the cooperation opportunities presented today. Delegations are encouraged to share these offers through the CooperaNet platform. It is so decided. Delegates, in the interest of time, we will defer the report on the Americas Competitive Exchange, Illinois, to the next meeting of the CD. I thank you for your cooperation. In that case, we now move to the procedural matters concerning the sectorial ministerial processes under the CD framework. We begin with the convocation of the 10th Inter-American Meeting of Ministers of Culture and Highest Appropriate Authorities, proposed to be held at OAS headquarters in Washington, D.C. on November 13th and 14th, 2025. The draft resolution for its convocation is presented in document CD Doc 450/25 and is now before the Council for consideration. I open the floor for comments on the draft resolution. I see no requests for the floor. As there are no comments, I propose that we proceed with the approval of the resolution, convening the 10th Inter-American Meeting of Ministers of Culture and Highest Appropriate Authorities at OAS headquarters on November 13th and 14th, 2025. With no objections, the resolution is so approved. We now turn to the convening of the 14th meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, SIP. I'm pleased to give the floor to the delegation of Barbados to present the draft resolution for the convening of this important meeting. Barbados, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation takes the floor to present to the CD the draft convocation, which informs of Barbados's offering to host the 14th regular meeting of the CIP, which is to be held from June 16th to 18th, 2026, in Bridgetown under the theme, The Scope of Artificial Intelligence, Reshaping Strategies for Sustainable and Secure Ports, as placed under the resolution of Montevideo 2025, as contained in documents CECIP/RES 1-24. My delegation seeks the support of member states in approving this document, which will authorize the hosting of the 14th regular meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, CIP, as well as approve the draft agenda for the 14th regular meeting of the CIP and the necessary actions to facilitate. The Inter-American Committee on Ports, CIP, is a committee of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development, CD, established by Resolution AG/RES 157327-0/98 in accordance with Articles 93 and 77 of the Charter of the Organization of American States, the OAS, and Articles 5 and 15 of the Statutes of CD. Article 5 of the Rules of Procedure of the CIP provides that the committee shall hold a regular meeting at least every 3 years. At the 13th regular meeting of the CIP, which was held in June 2023, and in compliance with the CIP Rules of Procedure and the SEDI Sectoral Ministerial Meeting Cycle, Barbados has offered to host the 14th regular meeting of the CIP in 2026. Madam Chair, globally, ports are the principal links in the maritime and waterway transportation supply chain. Barbados believes that such a platform, composed of the highest national government authorities for the port sector and its purpose, serves only to the benefit of our Americas to strengthen hemispheric cooperation. AI is redefining economic opportunities and placing technology, innovation, and knowledge-intensive services at the heart of national development strategies. It will notably bring growth and therefore competitiveness to the economies of the Americas. My delegation therefore places before the consideration of the CD that member states, move via acclamation and, in the spirit of consensus, to approve the draft convocation of the 14th regular meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, CIP, in Bridgetown, Barbados, between June 16th and 18th, 2026. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Barbados, for your kind offer to host the next meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Ports in 2026. I open the floor to delegations who may wish to comment on or refer to this item. I see no requests for the floor. There are no comments, there are no objections. I therefore propose that we adopt the resolution convening the 14th regular meeting of the CIP in Bridgetown, Barbados, from June 16th to 18th, 2026, and approve the corresponding draft agenda. Approved. Adopted. Finally, we consider for approval the 2025-2027 work plan of the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology, COMSIT, as set out in document CD REMSIT CD Doc 2/25 Rev 4. It is important to note that in accordance with the guidelines for ministerial meetings under the CD framework, this work plan This work plan responds to the mandates issued by the Science and Technology Authorities during the meeting of ministers held in December 2024 and was adopted, and was developed based on discussions at the planning meeting of COMSIT authorities held in March 2025. Following that meeting, the Secretariat circulated the draft work plan and incorporated the input from member states. This input is reflected in the revised document, which was agreed upon at the meeting of the Committee on Policies on May 20th, 2025, and is now before this Council as document CD REMSIT CD Doc 2/25 Rev 4. Once adopted, it will be reclassified and redistributed as a CD document. I now open the floor for comments or observations from delegations. With no objection, I propose that this Council approve the 2025 to 2027 work plan of the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology, COMSIT, as presented. Approved. We have now concluded all items on our order of business. I open the floor for any additional matters that delegations may wish to raise. I see no requests for the floor. Once again, therefore, I express my sincere appreciation to all delegations and to our esteemed panelists for their active participation in today's meeting. The experiences shared and the recommendations proposed not only reflect the common challenges that we face, but also reiterate our shared responsibility in addressing them. I look forward to continuing our collaboration as we work together to create enabling environments that retain talent and strengthen regional cooperation. This meeting is adjourned. I thank you.